So it's a very big pleasure to be here with you today. And it's a pleasure, of course, to share this stage with you, David. Personally, it is a dream of mine because I have collaborated for 5 years with Gastromotiva, and I can say that it is one of the organizations worldwide that are really doing a change for people's lives. So it is a pleasure for me to be here, and it's a pleasure to share a stage. And thank you very much to the organizers here in South Summit for the invitation.
Well, thank you, and I'm very glad to be here. I've been hearing the conversations, and I want us to get us more to the ground. And the way I think we can do this is through understanding the food systems on how can it be in the center of our worries, concerns, but actions. And I hope by the end of these 20, 25 minutes, we can understand that food systems should be equitable, should build social capital. And I think the one thing that we need to understand today when we talk about the food system, we're talking about production, consumption, distribution, the role of us as consumers. I don't know if you know, but in Brazil, we waste 8 times of what we could end with extreme hunger. And then when we come to Brazil, extreme hunger is very different from Europe and the US. We have 59 million suffering from food insecurity, not just moderate. We have 32 million on a medium scale. They have money, but they are eating ultra-processed food. They have another kind of hunger. But we have 33 million people who don't know if they're going to eat tomorrow. And out of those, 8.8 million are children. And when we talk about children, we are talking about 2030 now, huh? So children should be eating well. They are the future. They can have cognitive problems, they can have immunity problems. And in the end, what we do and what connects us is that at Gastromotiva for 18 years, we've been working with the hospitality market. And in this market, there is 80% of lack of people to work. So there is so much opportunities, but in the end, the system is out of place. And I don't know, maybe you can share your vision from this, because
definitely. And
from the food perspective, and you come from the industry. And by the way, we are just meeting. He lives in Mexico, I'm in Brazil, and we might make some business here.
Yeah, and it is so interesting to be able to talk about this, because I've met with David sometimes, but only online. So this is the first time in person. But as I said, I've been collaborating with Gastromotiva for 5 years. So that is amazing. In my mind, and what I think when you say about this, David, is we oftentimes forget the importance of culture, and we oftentimes forget that culture is dictated by the place we are in and how we grow and how we relate to nature. So to give a brief introduction of my work in Timus is a company, and we're based in Brescia, and we have offices in Silicon Valley and in Montreal. And our work is to understand the connection between people, food, and the brain, the cognitive side of things. And in particular, what I do is to try to understand this from the sustainability perspective. How can we use technology? How can we use our platform? How can we use our business to connect with people? And not only to connect with people, but to impact in a matterful way and in an impactful way. So I truly understand what you're saying. And as a professor also in Gastromotiva, I can see that hunger is real. And that not only hunger for food, but hungry for knowledge, hungry for opportunities, hunger for development. And that, I think, is one initial stone that I can contribute to the conversation and say, this is a semantic place that we can talk about, how people is hungry.
But our students, they come from very vulnerable communities, sometimes favelas, slums, and they never had, and this is what strikes me, they never had the ability to dream. we all dream here. We make plans, we make objectives, but someone that goes and was born in a place like in a favela where the state has no place, there are no service, public service, you struggle for money. The cooking or eating becomes not a priority. And as not a priority, I'm going to choose what's available. So one thing that I want to put more into context before I ask your relationship with the students and their families, we understood that our students, some of them come to learn how to work in a restaurant or become entrepreneurs, but then they also come to eat because they are practical classes. And in their families, they eat what there is an access. So as far as you go into a very vulnerable place where there is a lot of violence in Brazil, is related to violence, there is less option of fruits and vegetables and a lot of options of ultra-processed food, full of sodium and sugar and fat that we know. So to be able to bring people freedom and allow them to dream and say, wow, I can eat well. We've worked at Gastromotiva for 18 years with food education. We never brought research into it. It was always very intuitive. Some of our students become professors. They run projects in their communities. We just opened 130 kitchens during COVID to deliver food. But now they want to become schools for food, schools to teach the supermarket how to not waste food. It's just a revolution, and they believe they can eat well.
Yeah.
But I would like to understand from a Timo's perspective, when you study behavior, how can you really apply this not only for the industry, but for social programs, for governmental programs that really don't have the outreach to really get into those communities? This is the problem with government.
Yeah.
We get where the government doesn't get.
Yeah.
But how we feel we can be bridges, we can be this engrenaje.
Yeah.
Engrenaje in español.
So, you know, it's quite interesting that you asked me this because I remember one of the first talks we had that you mentioned an initiative that's going on in Brazil that's called the Cesta Básica. And from what I understood, because this was David's idea, not mine, is that they are providing a cesta, a basket, with basic products to the communities, right? And you're doing 300 communities in Brazil?
What happened is the government has a program that gives you a basic basket with only rice, beans, sugar, some of like ultra-processed sausages, and that's it. So what we've been doing, we chose out of 130 communities we work to study for 3 years what would be the impact if we bring education to those families, if we give them, offer them fruits and vegetables with education, what would be the results? And we're just starting that. We are a year and a half, and we see that 33% of the families that we are working, they are already believing they can make food changes, and they are working some of the recipes. This is very basic, but it's very important that we bring now your experience, so for year 2 and 3, we can go deeper into, and our aim with our sponsors, we work on sponsors, is to have 150 families that go out of this extreme poverty to eating healthy.
Yeah, and I mentioned this because I am in love with that part of the project, of course, and because it brings me back to my premise statement that is, we need to understand culture because culture is oftentimes taken for granted. We just imagine what culture is, but culture is the main driver for our food choices. And if we don't take that into account, if we don't understand how people connect with food and how we connect with culture at a local level, we can end up doing, policy solutions that don't work.
Exactly.
So, for example, I remember you told me in this conversation that you cannot deliver the same food in the basket to all of the towns because even though some of them might be close, it doesn't really apply the same solution for all of them. And what I'm trying to say here is when we create a solution based on neuroscience, and by neuroscience I mean connecting people's brain to a EEG and having a statistical and significance and hard science, we can create policies that are targeted, that are effective, because we prove what people like, we prove what people want. And this is often misread by the government and by the policymakers, because they think policy making is a copy-paste. They think that they can take what happens, what works in Europe, and they can take it to Latin America or Africa or any place in the global south, or even inside Europe, and they can replicate it like if it was a literal copy-paste. But it is not. It is far from the truth. And this is where I think our research can be, I mean, this is an initial step and one of many ideas I have where research can be impactful for Gastromotiva.
Before I jump, what I want to say, can you give us an example on when you see that happen and how you see that happen so everyone understands?
Yeah,
well?
of course.
Because I think it's so beautiful what you do, but give an example that you do with maybe a company or how would that apply into a non-profit that is connected to the government but also connected to the ground and knows those families.
Definitely, and I'm going to talk a bit on my expertise, that is sustainability, and how I apply neuroscience into the sustainability part. We've been doing a lot of work on alternative proteins, and we tested in a collaboration with Kilometro Zero, different varieties of alternative hamburgers to determine which of these alternatives was the ideal one for the consumer. And the result was really beautiful, because we tasted in a group of 60 people which hamburger will taste better at a brain level. And we tried 3 hamburgers that were plant-based, one that was 100% meat, and one that it was a blend, 50-50 blend between plants and animal. And the result was the most tasteful one. People may often think that it is the animal one, but it is not. The one that is tastier for the brain is a blend. And it requires a lot of, like multifactorial thinking to understand this, but it is inside our human evolution. Why do we like the blend, not only the plant or the meat, right? But it is great news, because it is easier to sell a blend than to convert everyone to veganism or vegetarianism, And we need, if we can convince the world to eat a blend 50-50, we automatically reduce 50% of carbon emissions. That is an impactful thing.
When I was hearing you before, 2 things came to my mind. One is like how we start talking about consciousness, and you're bringing something like a conscious consumer would still eat vegetable meat, but also he can afford. So what I want to leave with you for the next topic, it's how to democratize, how to bring those burgers instead of the ultra-processed sausages. But I would like to explain a little bit what we've learned in all these 18 years of Gastromotiva. We also work in Mexico, in South Africa. We've been advocating for social gastronomy, which is chefs and the hospitality market to be more inclusive with a human-centered approach. And we started with bringing a methodology to train kitchen assistants and also entrepreneurs in those communities. Today we have chefs, today we have cooks. And with the pandemic, we already had a restaurant in Rio that we opened with Massimo Bottura, that we only serve homeless people on a 3-course meal, with people like us being volunteers and serving them, and cooking only with food surplus and waste. And for 4 years, we studied what food surplus is. the hell that it is to try to change a law in a city of Rio just so I can receive donation. So that's what I'm so interested now in food systems. And then you bring COVID, and then we say, oh, our students are in their house, they are cook, and they know who is going through hunger, which are solo mothers. 72% of the people are black. So we're talking like social inequalities related to economics. It's the mirror of what happens with food insecurity. So it's an economic problem. And with those students, we understood that they could deliver food, but now they're becoming social entrepreneurs. And the ones, we run 3 indigenous kitchens, one in the middle of Brazil, one in the Amazon, and that's what I shared with you. One in Rio de Janeiro, it's a quilombola kitchen. Quilombolas are the black people who resist slavery, and still there, kind of like the effects of it.
And sorry to interrupt, man, but I'm really interested in understanding, do you see a difference between these 3 kitchens?
I see completely different, but I see the same willingness to, first, they feel belonging, which belonging you bring trust, relationship, the social capital. They feel they belong to a community of change makers, which I belong also to a lot of communities, and they feel empowered. Yeah. Even though I went through hunger, like a student, even though I went to, my family has all the problems, my father left my mother, I was raised by my mother, I now believe in myself, which that's the key, is the empowerment. But it's gastromotive, it's the motivation within. And then what comes after, that's the place that we can really make the change. Today, we support social business, like in São Paulo, we have a catering business that we just served on Saturday, before I came here, the president of LATAM Airlines, and the next day, the president of PepsiCo, all are sponsors for different projects. But what I mean here, and I've been hearing a lot of here of ESG, we are an answer for ESG. That's why companies invest in Gastromotiva's programs. When we fight food surplus and support local consumption and local buying of ingredients from small agriculture, when we train people and we get volunteers from all these companies to serve or just to be part and mentors, and also the social part, which is why we live, I think we are becoming really this organization that bridges with companies and governments and communities in a unique way that you mentioned, bioregionalism. There is a lot to do. We are a very small organization. Our programs are very, I would say, low budget compared to the market of like getting someone into the job market. But I see a huge distance with the public policies. And just to finish, Brazil was out of hunger in 2014, and we became a case study to the world, to governments. And all of a sudden, since 2018, hunger started again, food insecurity, and we got worst of the numbers of 2014. So I really believe that now is a different moment. The government knows it's a different moment, but now it's the effort of society together. And that's why I come here, because here I knew the community of Brazil is going to be here. It's one more time that I can talk to the government. So I believe in these relationships. But I really want to understand more how can we do things together in Brazil and Mexico, because I see a huge opportunity now when we have the community, how they can apply what you do with behavior consumption in their kitchens.
And I'm going to start answering your question, which is very broad, by saying one thing that I really enjoyed about being a professor in Gastromotiva Mexico. That is that in a short period of time, you can see how people change. You can see how they start dreaming again. I am the professor of an entrepreneurship program with small entrepreneurs in Mexico. And these guys are amazing, you know. They come from very vulnerable situations. They come from very current places. But they have this hunger to be better, to push themselves. And by the mentor that Gastromotiva provides, they are able to do it. You know, I start a course and they don't even know, like, they have the idea, but by the end of the course, I can see that they're really invested in, and they're using top-of-the-line terms of sustainability for their projects, you know, and I find that amazing. And yes, I also see a lot of opportunity working together, and I see a lot of opportunity in changing people's behavior toward food, you know? Not in a sense of manipulation, but in a sense of pushing for better, pushing for understanding, really reinstating and rehabilitating the connection that has been broken between humans and food. And it's been broken by a lot of factors, by homogenization of taste, by industrialization, by poor food choices by the food industry. So that is part of my mission, and that is the mission of Timus, to not only be in the food and beverage space, but be a benevolent force in the food and beverage space, and do things for good, not for profit.
Yeah. When you say benevolent, yesterday I watched a very good talk on ESG related to brands and how the brand is connected to sustainability. And I believe we have a place for really, like, on our sides as nonprofits to bring data. Of course, we can improve a lot in our organizations with management and everything, but also to work collectively. And I think we have only 2 minutes, but the message that I want to leave here, when we see such an innovation, such a startups and technology, I was thinking, what's the innovation that I'm most proud of last year? And last year I went to the Amazon for the first time. I went to Manaus, the capital, and I wanted to go for the first time to an indigenous community. And my partners there, the University of the Amazon, they say, okay, you go to Maués 1 day by boat. Then from there, you go to this community, this river, it's called Urupadi. One side is indigenous community, the other river communities. And I went through hunger there for 3 nights. And then I felt what it is to be in a community where the river is contaminated. It's called the River of Hunger now. They have no hunting, they have no food, and they would just have manioc for 8 days. I said, come on, I shared sardines with them. I left there, I said, what can I do, what can I do? Apart from it was Christmas, there was no money. But then we listened to them. We listened to 20 families, and they decided they wanted a chicken farm. And we invested, I don't know, 3,000 euros, 4,000 euros. And now they just received the first batch of chickens because they understood they needed to plant the food for the chickens, the corn. And now they are eating chicken and they're selling chicken. And now they want to change the school's menu and make an agroforest. And this is the region that sells Guaraná, the best Guaraná, to all over the world. So I really encourage all of us that when we bring innovation, we think on the people, on the humans that need those innovation, and how you democratize those technologies. We need to democratize, because we're going to share this as a social technology, and we want to be in 500 farms, 500 communities by 2025. So I wanted to leave this. Sorry, I keep reading Bioregionalism, and I say maybe I need to share what I believe.
It was great. Thank you very much, guys.